The phone vibrated against the nightstand with the specific, aggressive rhythm of a disaster waiting to happen. 6:02 a.m. The sun hadn't even thought about rising over the Chicago skyline yet, but apparently stupidity was an early riser. I squinted at the screen. Preston, VP Strategy. The title was a joke. The kid was 26, wore loafers without socks, and thought strategy meant using buzzwords he heard on a podcast while hungover. I cleared my throat, sliding my finger across the glass. Dana, here. Yeah. Hey, Dana. Look, this isn't working out. No preamble, no good morning. Just the static-filled voice of a nepotism hire calling from what sounded like the inside of a sensory deprivation tank, or maybe just his bathroom. I'm sorry? I sat up, pulling the duvet tighter around me. The air in the condo was freezing. The heating unit had been making a death rattle for weeks, much like the company's Q3 earnings report. You're too difficult to manage, Dana, Preston said. I could hear him chewing something, a bagel, nicotine gum, the audacity. My dad and I talked it over last night. We need agility, your legacy infrastructure. We're pivoting to a leaner client approach, so effective immediately, we're letting you go. HR will email the Cobra stuff. I didn't blink. I didn't cry. My heart rate didn't even spike. It's the thing about working in high-stakes client relations for a decade. You develop a reptilian indifference to chaos. But difficult to manage. That wasn't a critique. That was a confession of his incompetence. I was the one who remembered the investors' kids' birthdays. I was the one who talked the Sterling Group off the ledge when our tech stack imploded last November. I wasn't legacy infrastructure. I was the load-bearing wall. Noted, I said. My voice was flat, void of the panic he was probably hoping for. I think he wanted a fight. He wanted me to beg so he could feel like a titan of industry instead of a boy playing with his father's checkbook. Okay, well, good luck, he stammered, clearly thrown by my lack of hysterics. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. My career at Optima Holdings, 10 years of blood, sweat, and missed anniversaries ended by a kid who probably thought EBITDA was a Greek island. Now, let me tell you how I burned his kingdom down using nothing but a cell phone and a venti dark roast. Do us a small favor. If you're enjoying the distinct smell of corporate arson in the morning, hit subscribe and leave a like. It fuels our caffeine addiction and helps us tell more stories about people finding out exactly why you don't poke the bear. Thanks. I didn't go back to sleep. I didn't cry into my pillow. I swung my legs out of bed and walked straight to my home office. The glow of the monitors was the only light in the room. My access hadn't been cut yet. Amateurs. Preston had fired me at 6:03 a.m. IT didn't get in until 8 a.m. The automated revocation script usually ran at 9 a.m. EST. That gave me a nearly 3-hour window where I was technically fired but digitally alive, a ghost in the machine. I logged into the CRM. My fingers flew across the mechanical keyboard, the satisfying clack, clack, clack sounding like gunfire in the quiet apartment. I didn't delete anything. That's illegal. That's amateur hour. Deleting files leaves a footprint. It screams disgruntled employee. I wasn't disgruntled, I was strategic. I went to the client notes section. This is where the real value of the company lived, not the contracts. Contracts are just paper. Notes were the gold. The notes contained the soft intel. Which investor was going through a divorce and needed extra reassurance? Which CEO preferred texts over emails? Which CFO was secretly shopping for a new platform? The specific vintage of scotch to send to Mr. Sterling when the market dipped. I didn't download the list. Downloading triggers a DLP data loss prevention alert. Instead, I opened the files. I looked at them. I let my photographic memory do what it had been doing for 20 years. I didn't need a flash drive. I needed coffee. But then I did one small, petty thing. I went into the calendar system for the upcoming quarterly review, the one Preston was supposed to lead next week to prove his worth to the board. I didn't delete the meeting. I just uninvited the key stakeholders, and then I turned off the notification that would alert the organizer Preston of the change. To the system, it would look like a glitch. To the investors, it would look like the meeting was cancelled. To Preston, on the day of the presentation, it would look like an empty room. I logged out at 6:45 a.m., right as the sun began to bleed grey light through the blinds. I walked to the kitchen and started the coffee grinder. The noise was aggressive, violent, beautiful, difficult to manage. I whispered to the empty kitchen, pouring the beans. Preston had made a critical calculation error. He thought my value was in the database. He thought the client list was an Excel spreadsheet that he could just hand over to some fresh grad in a polyester suit. He didn't realize that I was the list. The relationships were tethered to me, not the logo on my business card. He hadn't just fired an employee. He had severed the nervous system of the company. I took my first sip of coffee. It was hot, bitter, tasted like freedom. I had about 2 hours before the rest of the world woke up 2 hours to formulate the kind of exit strategy that they teach in business schools as a warning. I picked up my phone again. I wasn't going to call a recruiter. Recruiters are for people who need jobs. I didn't need a job. I needed a weapon. I scrolled past my mother's contact, past my ex-husband's number, which I really should delete, stopped on a name I hadn't dialed in 3 years, Marcus Thorne. He was the regional director at Apex Capital, our direct competitor, a $700 million behemoth that Optima had been trying to undercut for years. Marcus had tried to poach me 5 times. The last time, I told him I was loyal to the vision at Optima. Loyalty. God, that word tasted like ash now. Loyalty is just corporate speak for sucker. I watched the seconds tick by on the microwave clock. 6:58 a.m. I wasn't going to just leave. I was going to take the floorboards with me. By 7:30 a.m., I was standing on the corner of 4th and State, watching my golden retriever, Buster, sniff a fire hydrant with the kind of intense focus Preston had never applied to a spreadsheet in his life. The city was waking up. Delivery trucks were idling, exhaling plumes of gray exhaust into the freezing air. Commuters were rushing toward the L, heads down, eyes glazed, marching toward their cubicles. I felt like an alien. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't one of them. I was untethered. I held the leash in one hand and my phone in the other. My thumb hovered over Marcus Thorne's number. There's a specific etiquette to calling a competitor. You don't do it during office hours, that's desperate. Don't do it after hours, that's intrusive. You do it in the power window, that slice of time between the gym and the first meeting of the day. I hit dial. It rang once. Dana? Marcus's voice was crisp. No confusion, no hello. He knew exactly who was calling. That's the difference between a professional and a pretender. Morning, Marcus, I said, watching Buster finally decide that the hydrant was indeed a hydrant. I hope I'm not interrupting your meditation. Was just finishing an espresso. To what do I owe the pleasure? Finally decided to let me buy you that lunch? I'm actually free for breakfast, I said. Or more accurately, I'm free for the foreseeable future, as of about 90 minutes ago. There was a silence on the line. Not an awkward silence, but a heavy one. The sound of a shark sensing blood in the water. They fired you? Marcus asked, his tone dropping an octave. Preston did, I said. I was too difficult to manage, wanted to pivot to agility. Marcus let out a short, bark-like laugh. Agility? That's cute. That's what people say right before they drive the car off a cliff because they fired the only person who knows how to use the brakes. I'm not calling to vent, Marcus. I know. You're calling because you know that I know Optima's entire Q1 strategy relies on 3 key accounts. Accounts that, if I recall correctly, only take calls from you. God, it was refreshing to talk to an adult. I'm not confirming or denying anything, I said, keeping it legally vague. I'm just saying that I am currently a free agent. But my non-compete. I paused for effect. Well, let's just say Optima's HR department has been a revolving door for 5 years. The paperwork for my last promotion in 2019? I'm pretty sure it's currently a coaster on someone's desk in the Cayman Islands. I never signed the updated terms. So you're clear. I'm wide open. Name your number, Marcus said. No hesitation. No, let me check with the board. 20% bump on base, senior VP title, and I want full autonomy on the Sterling account if they decide to migrate. Done, Marcus said. I'll have the offer letter in your inbox in 10 minutes. Can you start Monday? I can start now. Even better, I've got a 10 a.m. strategy call. I'll send you the Zoom link. Don't say anything, just show up. I want to see the look on my team's face. See you then. I hung up. 7:42 a.m. I had been unemployed for exactly 1 hour and 40 minutes. In that time, I had secured a raise, a promotion, and a front row seat to my old company's funeral. I looked down at Buster. "Good boy," I said. "Let's go home. Mummy has to put on a blazer." Back in the apartment, the adrenaline started to settle into a cold, hard resolve. I showered, scrubbing off the feeling of Preston's voice. I put on my armor, a charcoal suit, silk blouse, the pearl earrings that I bought myself after closing the Anderson deal. I checked my personal email. The offer letter was there, time-stamped 7:55 a.m. Marcus didn't mess around. I signed it digitally. My hand didn't shake. At 8:55 a.m., I received a text from Optima's automated system. Remote wipe initiated. Device will reset in 60 seconds. I watched my company phone go black. The Apple logo appeared, wiping away 10 years of emails, texts, and contacts. They thought they were hurting me. They thought erasing the phone erased the threat. I picked up my personal phone, the one I had just used to sign a contract with their biggest rival. I opened LinkedIn. It was time to light the match. I didn't write a scathing tell-all. That's tacky. That's divorced dad on Facebook energy. No, corporate warfare is subtle. It's passive-aggressive. It's bless your heart, weaponized into a status update. I typed, "After 10 incredible years, I'm closing the chapter at Optima. It's been a journey. While I'll miss the incredible teams I've built, sometimes you outgrow a space that can no longer support your vision. Excited to announce that I've accepted a senior VP role at Apex Capital, starting, immediately. To my clients, you know where to find me. Everyone else, let's build something real." I hit post. The vacuum effect had begun. I poured a second cup of coffee and waited for the inevitable ping of panic. It didn't take long. By 10 a.m., my LinkedIn post had more engagement than Optima's last 3 product launches combined. The corporate world is a small, incestuous village. Everyone knows everyone, and everyone loves a train wreck, especially when the conductor is a 20-something with a trust fund. Comments were a mix of generic congratulations, bots, and carefully worded inquiries from people who smelled smoke. "Huge loss for Optima," commented the CFO of a logistics firm we managed. That was a public shot across the bow. "Can't wait to see what you do at Apex," wrote a vendor who I knew hated Preston personally because Preston once asked him if he could Venmo a $50,000 invoice. But the real action was in the DMs. My inbox was flooding. 2 investors, heavy hitters with portfolios worth north of $50 million, emailed me privately. "Where are you headed? We need to talk. Does this mean the Q3 restructure is off? Call me." I didn't reply immediately. In negotiation, silence is leverage. If you answer too fast, you look eager. If you wait, you look busy. I wanted to look like I was already fixing someone else's problems. Then came the text from inside the burning building. It was Chloe, a junior analyst I had mentored. She was bright, hard-working, and unfortunately currently sitting 20 feet away from Preston's office. Chloe, 10:14 a.m. "Oh my God, Dana, tell me it's not true." "Chloe, 10:14 a.m. Preston just walked out of his office looking like he swallowed a bee. He's asking IT for your laptop password. He says you compromised the integrity of the database." Chloe, 10:15 a.m. "Did you give someone the list? Everyone is freaking out." I sipped my coffee, watching the bubbles pop on the surface. Poor Chloe. She was witnessing the meltdown in real time. Me. I didn't give anyone anything, Chloe. I just left. The list is in the system. Tell him to check the cloud backups if he can figure out the password. Hint, it's not password 123 anymore. Chloe. He's screaming at the CTO, says clients are emailing him asking why their scheduled calls are disappearing from the calendar. Dana, what did you do? Me. Nothing. I just stopped holding the ceiling up. I felt a twinge of guilt. Just a twinge. Chloe didn't deserve this. The support staff, the IT guys, the receptionists, they were the collateral damage in Preston's ego trip, but you can't save everyone when the ship is sinking. Sometimes the best you can do is show them where the lifeboats are. Update your resume, Chloe. Send it to me tonight. I put the phone down. On my laptop screen, the Zoom meeting for Apex Capital was starting. I clicked join. The screen populated with faces. Marcus was there, looking smug. His team looked confused. They were in the middle of discussing how to breach Optima's hold on the manufacturing sector. And that's why, Marcus was saying, we need to figure out a way to bypass their relationship manager. He stopped, saw my face in the grid. Morning, everyone, I said, adjusting my camera. Sorry I'm late. Traffic from the bedroom to the office was a nightmare. The silence in the Zoom room was exquisite. Everyone, Marcus said, grinning like a Cheshire cat. Meet our new Senior VP of Client Relations. Dana, why don't you tell the team why they don't need to worry about bypassing the relationship manager anymore? Because, I said, leaning into the microphone, I am the relationship manager, and I think Mr. Sterling is expecting a call from us around lunch. The look on the marketing director's face was worth the price of admission. It was a mix of awe and terror. They knew who I was. They had been trying to beat me for years. Now I was sitting at their table. Meanwhile, back at Optima, the vacuum was sealing. Without me there to filter the noise, the investors were going straight to the top. And the top was Preston. Preston, who didn't know that Mr. Sterling hated small talk. Preston, who didn't know that the Sterling account required a specific reporting format because the old man was legally blind in one eye. Preston, who was about to answer the phone and try to disrupt a 70-year-old billionaire. I muted myself on the Zoom call and watched the chaos unfold in my mind's eye. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, except I had cut the brake lines myself. 10:45 a.m. My personal cell rang. It was a number I recognized. The CEO of Optima, Preston's father, the man who had signed off on my firing because his son told him I was difficult. I let it go to voicemail. You don't take the first call. That's rule number 1. You let them leave a message. You let them hear the sound of their own desperation recorded for posterity. The voicemail notification popped up a minute later. Dana, it's Richard. Call me back. There seems to be some confusion regarding the client transition. We need to clear this up immediately. Confusion. That was a polite word for hemorrhage. I deleted the voicemail. I wasn't difficult to manage, Richard. I was just impossible to replace. The thing about bad leadership is that it's usually invisible until a crisis hits. When the sun is shining and the market is up, a monkey in a suit can run a company. But when the storm comes, you find out who's actually steering the ship. At Optima, the storm wasn't just coming. It was already raining inside the conference room. I wasn't there, obviously. I was sitting in my ergonomic chair at home, browsing the Apex internal wiki. But I knew exactly what was happening, because the industry is a whispering gallery. Around 11:30 I got a text from a friend in Optima's accounting department. Preston is literally sweating through his shirt. 2 investors just ghosted the strategy kickoff. I smiled. The glitch. Here's what happened. When I uninvited the stakeholders from the calendar earlier that morning, I didn't just remove them. I removed the room reservation link from their specific invites but left it on Preston's. So Preston was sitting in a Zoom room, staring at his webcam, waiting for people who were currently staring at their own Outlook calendars, wondering why the meeting had disappeared. He couldn't call them. He didn't have their direct lines. He only had the office numbers listed in the CRM. And do you know who answers the office number of a Fortune 500 CEO? An executive assistant who has been trained to block people like Preston. He's blaming the server, my source texted. He's yelling at IT about a Microsoft outage that only affects him. I took a bite of a bagel. The schadenfreude was delicious, salty, and carb-heavy. The real blow came 20 minutes later. One of Optima's biggest clients was a manufacturing conglomerate called Vanguard. They were part of a complex deal, a series of interdependent contracts that relied on precise timing. If one link broke, the whole chain collapsed. I had managed the Vanguard relationship for 6 years. The VP of operations there, a woman named Alina, trusted me because I once drove a hard drive across state lines at 3 a.m. To save her audit, Alina didn't like surprises, and she definitely didn't like Preston. My new email at Apex pinged, from Alina Rodriguez at Vanguard Corp. to Dana Evans at apex.com. Subject: lunch. Body: just heard the news. Their loss. We're removing Optima from the pending deal chain. Effective immediately. Operational instability. That's the official reason. Unofficially, new kid called me sweetheart on a voicemail. Let's talk transfer protocols. I forwarded the email to Marcus with a single note. Incoming. Back at Optima, this must have triggered a seismic event. When a client like Vanguard pulls out, it's not just an email, it's a red alert in the dashboard. Revenue projections drop instantly. Algorithms start flashing red. I imagined Preston standing in front of the dashboard, watching the numbers tick down like a bomb timer. The CFO would be there by now, arms crossed, looking at the agility strategy and wondering why it looked so much like bankruptcy. It's a glitch, Preston was probably screaming. She must have sabotaged the data. That was the narrative they would try to spin. Sabotage, hacking, theft. It was easier to blame the witch than admit you didn't know how to grow the crops. But I hadn't touched the data. The data was all there. The context was missing. They had the phone numbers. They just didn't know that you don't call Mr. Henderson on Tuesdays because that's his dialysis day. They had the email addresses. They just didn't know that the CFO of Blue Sky blocks any email with the word synergy in the subject line. I was the context. I was the metadata. My phone rang again. It was a 312 area code. Optima Legal. I stared at it. "Hello, darkness, my old friend," I muttered. I picked up. "Miss Evans?" A voice like sandpaper. It was Gerald, the general counsel, a man who had been asleep at the wheel since 2015. "Hi, Gerald. Long time. Did you finally find that Tupperware I left in the fridge?" "This isn't a social call, Dana. We have reason to believe you are in violation of your employment agreement. We're seeing activity indicating you're soliciting clients." "I'm not soliciting anyone, Gerald. They're calling me. There's a difference. It's called freedom of choice. It's very popular in America." "You have a non-compete," he barked. Section 4, paragraph 2. "You are barred from working with any competitor for 18 months. "Gerald," I said, my voice dropping to a soothing, patronizing tone. "Do you have the signed copy of that agreement?" "Of course we do. It's in your file." "Is it? Or is it in the box of files that got lost when we moved floors in 2019? Because I seem to recall HR sending out a panic email asking everyone to re-sign their docs, and I seem to recall forgetting silence, the kind of silence that costs billable hours. "I'm looking at the digital record," he blustered. "Digital record says pending signature, doesn't it?" I guessed. It was a gamble, but an educated one. "We will bury you in litigation," Gerald threatened, losing his composure. "You can try," I said. "But while you're drafting the lawsuit, Vanguard is drafting a termination letter. You might want to focus on that." I hung up. My hand was trembling slightly. Not from fear, from anger. They really thought they owned me. They thought a piece of paper that they couldn't even find superseded my right to earn a living after they kicked me to the curb at dawn. I took a deep breath. "Let them swing," I whispered to myself, echoing the advice I knew Marcus's legal team would give me. I turned back to my Apex laptop. I had work to do, real work. The VP's son was sweating, but I was just getting warmed up. A cease and desist letter looks scary if you don't know how to read between the lines. It's written in all caps, bold fonts, and uses words like immediately, irreparable harm, and governed by the laws of the state of Illinois. It's designed to make you panic, to make you freeze, to make you beg for forgiveness. The email from Optima Legal hit my inbox at 1 p.m. Attached as a PDF named Urgent Evans C and D PDF. I didn't freeze. I forwarded it to Marcus. Subject, fan mail. 3 minutes later, Marcus walked into the Zoom room I was still idling in. He had a woman with him. She looked like she ate nails for breakfast and chased them with scotch. "Dana," Marcus said, "meet Sarah, our general counsel. She just read your love letter from Optima." Sarah adjusted her glasses. "It's cute," she said. Her voice was dry, raspy. "Wonderful. They're citing a 2014 contract template that was invalidated by the Illinois Freedom to Work Act amendments in 2022. Also, they misspelled proprietary twice." I let out a breath. I didn't know I was holding. "So I'm good?" "You're better than good," Sarah said, grinning. "You're a ghost. I called a friend over there, off the record, of course. Apparently Gerald is tearing the HR archives apart, looking for a wet signature from you post-2018. They can't find it because it doesn't exist. I said when we merged with the Theta Group, HR was a disaster zone. The director was fired for embezzlement. and half the files were misplaced during the audit. They sent out a DocuSign link to everyone to update their files. I just never clicked it. Why? Marcus asked, genuinely curious. 'Cause I was busy saving the Vanguard account while Preston was trying to figure out how to expense a strip club visit as client development, I said. Priorities. Sarah laughed. Well, their incompetence is our immunity. Let them sue. By the time they get a court date, you'll have moved half their portfolio. I'll draft a response that basically tells them to go kick rocks, professionally speaking. Thanks, Sarah. Don't thank me. Just bring us the Sterling account. I want to see Gerald's face when he reads the transfer notice. She left the frame. Marcus looked at me. You okay? I'm fine, I said. It's insult to injury. They fire me, and then they try to sue me for finding a new job. It's like breaking up with someone and then suing them for dating. That's corporate, Marcus said. They don't own the relationship, Dana. They just rent the space where it happens. You're the landlord. I like that. I'm the landlord. Back at Optima, the paper tiger was starting to look more like a papier-mâché damp squib. My phone buzzed again. Text from Chloe. Chloe, 1:45 p.m. Gerald is screaming in the hallway. He's blaming HR. HR is blaming IT. Preston is hiding in his office. He cancelled the all-hands meeting. Dana, the stock is down 2% since this morning. Rumors are flying that we lost Vanguard. Me. Rumors travel faster than light. Chloe. Is it true? Me. Watch the news. I felt a cold resolve settling in. They were flailing. They were trying to use legal threats to stop a bleeding wound that was entirely self-inflicted. But the real twist wasn't the legal battle. It was the psychological one. I decided to send one email, not to Preston, not to Gerald, but to the board of directors. I still had their personal emails saved. I didn't use my Apex address. I used my personal Gmail. Subject, transition. Body. Dear board members, as you may have heard, my tenure at Optima has ended abruptly. I want to ensure a smooth transition for the accounts I managed, protecting the value of your shares. However, I am currently being blocked by legal threats from the executive team. If you are wondering why key accounts are unresponsive or exiting, please direct your inquiries to Preston. I am happy to assist, provided the legal harassment ceases. Best, Dana. I hit send. It was a grenade, a polite, well-worded grenade. The board didn't know the details of the day-to-day operations. They just knew the stock price, and they knew me. I had presented to them for 5 years straight. I was betting that at least one of them would read it and pick up the phone, not to call me, but to call Preston's dad, the CEO, and ask him why the hell his son was setting fire to the furniture. Legal threats work on fear, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I was armed, and I had a lunch date to plan. Money is cowardly. It runs away from noise. And right now, Optima Holdings was the loudest place on Wall Street. By 2:30 p.m., 3 major investors had frozen their activity. This wasn't just, we're unhappy. This was, we are pausing all capital deployment until we figure out if you people are actually insane. The freeze represented about $40 million in fluid capital. In the grand scheme of a $700 million fund, it's not death, but it's a heart attack. I was sitting in my living room now, officially onboarded onto the Apex systems. I could see the market movements on my second monitor. Optima was trending on a few niche finance blogs. Executive shakeup at Optima. Agility or instability. Read one headline. I took a sip of lukewarm coffee. Agility, I snorted. The phone rang. It wasn't Preston. It wasn't Gerald. It was Richard, the CEO, again. This time I answered. Dana, Richard said. He sounded tired. He sounded old. I got a call from the board. They forwarded me your email. Hello? Richard. I assumed they might. What are you doing, Dana? You're poaching clients. You're violating your contract. I'm accepting calls, Richard. There's a difference. And regarding the contract, talk to Gerald. Ask him about the 2019 files or lack thereof. Preston says you stole the client list, Richard said, his voice hardening. He says you downloaded the database before you were locked out. Preston lies, Richard. You know that. He lied about his GPA. He lied about the summer internship that was actually a surf camp, and now he's lying about this. I didn't steal a thing. The list is in the system. The relationship's left with me. You can't copyright trust. There was a long silence. Richard knew I was right. That was the tragedy of it. He was a smart man who had made one fatal error. He loved his idiot son more than his company. "Stop this," Richard said, almost pleadingly. "Come back. We can work this out. Consulting basis, higher rate. Just fix the bleeding." "I can't do that, Richard. I've already accepted a position at Apex." "Apex?" The word came out like a curse. "You went to the competition?" "In 6 hours they made an offer. They didn't call me difficult. They called me essential. It's amazing what a little respect does for loyalty." "I will destroy you," Richard said, the desperation turning to malice. "I will spend every dollar I have to bury you." "You're already losing dollars, Richard." "I wouldn't waste the ones you have left." I hung up. My hands were shaking again, but this time it was adrenaline. I had just told a CEO to go to hell. It was exhilarating. I turned to my Apex team chat. "Me. CEO just called. He's panic bargaining." Then he moved to threats. "They are scared." Marcus. "Good. Keep pressing." "Me. I'm going to play the ace. I'm emailing Sterling." Mr. Sterling was the whale, the legacy investor. He had been with Optima since the 92nds. He was old money, old school, and famously grumpy. He hated change, but he hated incompetence more. I drafted the email. No subject line, just his name. "Mr. Sterling, I wanted to personally inform you that as of this morning, I am no longer with Optima. It was not my choice to leave, but it is my choice where I go next. I am now at Apex Capital. I know you value continuity. I know you hate the dashboard interface Preston is trying to push. I know you just want your quarterly dividends to arrive on time without a strategy pivot conversation. I'm having lunch at the grill tomorrow, 12:30, table 4. If you're hungry, I'd love to buy you a steak. If not, it was an honor serving you. Dana." I hit send. This was the risk. If Sterling stayed with Optima, Richard could stabilize the ship. If Sterling left, the ship would capsize. Sterling's exit would signal to the entire market that Optima was unsafe. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes. My inbox pinged. From Arthur Sterling. To Dana Evans at apex.com. Body. I like my steak rare. See you at 12:30. I let out a laugh that sounded a little bit like a sob. "This is what panic smells like," I said aloud to the empty room. I forwarded Sterling's reply to Marcus. "You just earned your bonus." Back at Optima, I imagined Preston explaining to his father why the legacy infrastructure was currently eating his lunch. The grill is one of those Chicago institutions where the waiters wear white jackets and the martinis are the size of bird baths. It's where deals are made, or in my case, where revenge is served rare. I arrived at 12:15 p.m. I wanted to be seated before Sterling arrived. Table 4, in the corner, away from the prying eyes of the lunch crowd. At 12:30 on the dot, Arthur Sterling walked in. He was 72, walked with a cane that looked like it could conceal a sword, and wore a suit that cost more than my first car. He spotted me and, for the first time in 10 years, he smiled a genuine, crinkle-eyed smile. "Dana," he said, easing himself into the booth. "You look lighter." "Unemployment suits me, Arthur," I said, signaling the waiter. "Sparkling water for me." "Scotch, neat, for the gentleman, the 18-year. He nodded in approval. "You remember?" "I remember everything. That was my job." We ordered. We made small talk about his grandkids, about the winter weather, about the Bulls' terrible season. We didn't talk about Optima until the steaks arrived. Arthur cut into his fillet with surgical precision. "So," he said, not looking up. Preston, I agreed. "The boy is an idiot," Arthur said calmly. "I told Richard that when he hired him. I said, 'Richard, nepotism is fine if the kid is smart. If the kid is a moron, it's suicide.'" Richard didn't listen. "He wanted to modernize," I said, taking a sip of water. "Agility. He wanted to play dress-up," Arthur scoffed. "He called me last week, to tell me that my portfolio was over-indexed on traditional assets and I should look into crypto." "Me? Arthur Sterling? Crypto?" He shook his head. "I didn't fire him then because I knew you were the firewall. I knew you'd filter out the stupidity before it touched my money." "I tried," I said, "but the firewall got unplugged this morning." Arthur looked at me. His eyes were sharp, intelligent, dangerous. "I never trusted the VP. I trusted you. You were the one who called me when the market tanked in '08 to tell me not to sell. You were the one who fixed the tax error in '15. You, not the logo. I'm at Apex now, Arthur. They respect the work. They don't think I'm difficult to manage. Difficult? Arthur chuckled. That's what weak men call strong women. My first wife was difficult. She also built half my empire. He took a sip of scotch. I'm moving the fun, Dana, he said quietly. I felt the air leave my lungs. All of it? All of it. The papers are already with my lawyers. You'll have them by end of day. That's $80 million walking out the door of Optima. Richard will have a stroke. Richard needs a wake-up call or a retirement plan. Arthur leaned in. But here's the thing, Dana. I'm not the only one. What do you mean? The terrifying thing about country clubs is that we talk. The Davis family, the Hendersons, the pension fund guys, we've all been waiting. We were just waiting for you to make the first move. They're leaving too. If I go, they go. I'm the bellwether. Once the sterling money moves, the herd follows. He raised his glass. To agility. I clinked my glass against his. Water to agility? It was a staggering revelation. I hadn't just stolen a client. I had triggered a bank run. I looked at my phone under the table. 3 missed calls from Preston. 1 text. Preston, 12:45 p.m. Can we talk, please? The please was new. Trouble? Arthur asked, eyeing the phone. Just the past trying to catch up, I said. I think I'll let it go to voicemail. Good girl, Arthur said. Now tell me about this Apex group. Do they have good scotch? The best, I lied. I'd make sure Marcus bought a crate by tomorrow. I walked out of that lunch feeling 10 feet tall. I had walked in as a fired employee scrambling for ground. I walked out as the architect of a revolution. But the final blow hadn't landed yet. That would happen at the quarterly call, and I intended to be listening. By 3 p.m., the atmosphere inside Optima Holdings must have felt like a submarine that had gone too deep. The pressure was crushing the hull. I was back at my desk, officially logged into Apex's secure server, watching the transfer request from the Sterling Group come through. It was a beautiful document. $80 million, migrating from the sinking ship to the lifeboat. My phone was now permanently on Do Not Disturb, but the notifications rolled in like waves. Chloe sent me a text that felt like a war correspondent dispatch. Chloe, 3:15 p.m. It's a bloodbath. Richard is in the boardroom screaming at Preston. Preston is crying, actually crying. The CTO did a full audit of your activity logs. Me and Chloe. He told them you didn't touch a thing. He said, she didn't delete the data. She just took the passwords to the relationships. Richard threw a stapler. I leaned back in my chair. She took the passwords to the relationships. That was the most poetic thing the CTO had ever said. They were looking for a crime. They wanted to find a deleted folder, a stolen hard drive, a virus, anything that would make me the villain and them the victims. But there was no crime. It was just competence leaving the building. The rumor mill was spinning out of control. Staffers were updating their LinkedIn profiles in real time. I saw 3 connection requests from Optima VPs in the last hour, rats swimming toward the floating door. Then came the call from Marcus. Dana, he said, sounding like he was suppressing a laugh. You're not going to believe who just called me. Richard? No, Preston. He called the main line, asked to speak to the director. He sounded unhinged. He tried to threaten me with a lawsuit for tortious interference. I put him on speaker so Sarah could hear. She laughed so loud he hung up. He's desperate, I said. He knows Sterling is gone. He probably got the legal notice 10 minutes ago. Oh, he knows. And get this, Richard is trying to freeze the transfer. He's claiming administrative review. It won't hold, but it buys them 24 hours. It doesn't matter, I said. The damage is done. The trust is gone. Even if they hold the money hostage, the client is mentally checked out. Exactly. Listen, Dana, the quarterly investor call for Optima is tomorrow morning. It's public because they have some bondholders. You should listen in. I wouldn't miss it for the world. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of onboarding. I set up my new email signature, Dana Evans, Senior VP, Apex Capital. It looked good. It looked permanent. 5 p.m. I got one last email to my personal account. It was from Preston. Subject, no subject. Body, you ruined everything. I hope you're happy. You're a vindictive. I stared at the screen. He still didn't get it. He thought I did this to hurt him. He thought this was personal. I hit reply. Me. I didn't ruin anything, Preston. I just stopped fixing what you broke. Good luck on the call tomorrow. I closed my laptop. I poured a glass of wine, walked to the window, and looked out at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere in one of those glass towers, Preston was spiraling. He was looking at charts that went down, calendars that were empty, and a phone that wouldn't ring. He had fired me because I was difficult to manage. He was about to find out that the only thing harder than managing me was surviving without me. The sun set. The city lights came on. Tomorrow was the quarterly call, the final act. I took a sip of wine. Here's to you, Preston, I whispered. The Optima Holdings Q3 investor call began at 9 a.m. sharp. I was sitting in my new office at Apex, a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. The coffee was better here. The air was cleaner. Marcus sat across from me, his feet up on the desk, grinning like a kid on Christmas. We dialed into the conference bridge as anonymous guests. Welcome to the Q3 earnings call, the moderator's automated voice intoned. Please hold for the CEO, Richard Vance. Richard came on the line. He sounded like he had aged 10 years in 24 hours. His voice was raspy, thin. Good morning, everyone, Richard said. We have some updates regarding our strategic outlook. As you know, we are pivoting to a more agile client management structure. I could hear the tremble in his voice. He was reading a script that Preston had probably written. He didn't believe a word of it. We are streamlining operations, Richard continued, moving away from legacy infrastructure to a digital-first approach. Legacy infrastructure, Marcus mouthed at me, suppressing a laugh. However, Richard said, we have experienced some short-term volatility in our portfolio retention. We are addressing these issues. The line opened for questions. Usually these calls are tame softballs. Great quarter, Richard. How's the weather? Not today. This is Michael from the pension fund, a voice boomed. I knew Michael. No-nonsense guy. Richard, I'm looking at the transaction reports. I see an $80 million outflow pending from the Sterling Group, and rumors of Vanguard exiting. Can you explain how streamlining operations resulted in losing your two biggest anchors in a single day? Dead silence on the line. I could hear papers shuffling. I imagined Preston frantically scribbling notes on a whiteboard, trying to give his dad an answer. Michael, that's a temporary reallocation, Richard stammered. We are in discussions. It doesn't look temporary, Richard, Michael interrupted. I spoke to Arthur Sterling this morning. He said he moved because, and I quote, the only person at Optima who knew how to read a balance sheet was fired yesterday morning. Marcus pumped a fist in the air silently. We had to make personnel changes, Richard said, his voice rising in panic. Dana she was difficult to manage. She wasn't aligned with the vision. The vision? Another investor cut in. Richard, the vision seems to be bankruptcy. If she was the one holding the Sterling account, why the hell did you fire her before securing the asset? She must have. Richard was spiraling. He went off script. Who gave her the client list? Someone must have given her the list. It was the wail of a dying king. She didn't need the list, you idiot, the investor shouted. She was the list. The call descended into chaos. Voices overlapping. Questions about the stock price. Demands for Preston's resignation. I reached out and pressed the end call button. Silence returned to the office. Well, Marcus said, exhaling. That went well. Better than expected, I admitted. The stock is down 12% in pre-market, Marcus said, checking his phone. Richard is done. The board will have his head by noon. And Preston? He'll be lucky if he can get a job at a car wash. I looked out the window. The river below was churning, grey and cold, but moving steadily forward. I didn't feel vindictive anymore. I just felt correct. The universe had corrected an error. Competence had won. So, Marcus said, standing up, lunch? I think Sterling is expecting us to celebrate the transfer. In a minute, I said. I have one last email to answer. I opened my personal inbox. There was a message from Optima's chief compliance officer, a woman named Sarah, different Sarah, equally sharp. She was the one person at Optima who had tried to warn Richard about Preston's creative accounting years ago. From smiller@optima.com to Dana Evans at apex.com. Subject. Resume. Body. I assume you're hiring. I have the files on the regulatory breaches Preston ignored. Thought they might be useful for your due diligence. I can start Monday. I smiled. Me. See you Monday, Sarah. I grabbed my coat. Ready? Marcus asked. Ready, I said. I walked out of the office, my heels clicking on the polished floor. I didn't look back. I didn't drink alone to Danny DeVito as I ASIP, though the thought was tempting. I didn't need to. I had my dignity. I had my clients. And I had the distinct, warm satisfaction of knowing that somewhere in a cooling office tower, Preston was finally learning the most important lesson of business. You can fire the employee, you can delete the email account, but you can never, ever fire the truth. And the truth is, I was never difficult to manage. I was just too good to be led by a fool. I hit the elevator button, going up, and that's how it all played out. Funny how life can twist itself into knots and then somehow straighten out again. Yeah. Thanks for listening and being